What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Like, share, subscribe, comment. IG tick that bottom of the video. It's gonna hop right into it. So yeah, long time no see. Nigga been on vacation. Took a little bit off after, the pod season over. But we hopping back into the regular content. So today we will be talking about the suing of Chad Hugo suing Pharrell Williams. So if you don't know who Chad Hugo is, because I assume you know who Pharrell is, he was the other member in the Neptunes and also another member of N.E.R.D, who the third member is, his government is Sheldon Haley. You'll see him mentioned as Shay Haley sometimes. But we have kind of already knew rumored, well, it hasn't been rumored, but 2 years ago, we knew that Chad Hugo had already sold Pharrell about the trademark of their name and that they no longer were on speaking terms. But now, we have another lawsuit that is accusing Pharrell of more. And we're going to hop right into it. So, reading the tweet to begin with. So, he's now taking him to federal court. He's alleging Pharrell acted as a managing member, failed for years to provide required financial records, royalty statements, and profit distributions tied to the Neptunes and N.E.R.D. And give you a little more, detail than that before we get into the paperwork. The complaint claims the breach of fiduciary duty. So, if you don't know what that means. So, it's saying basically fiduciary duty is just legally that person is responsible of basically managing and doing things the right way without screwing others which is basically a lot of what Chad Hugo is accusing him of. Obviously a breach of that, saying that he withheld things and things of that sort. So they saying he withheld royalties and touring merch / income, denied access to books and records despite repeated legal demands, alleged damages in hundreds of thousands to over $1 million. And Hugo is demanding a court-ordered accounting plus a jury trial. So, now we're finna get into the paperwork. Now, before I get to the paperwork, just from reading that, it does sound like that obviously, we knew that Chad and Pharrell had a long-standing relationship. As I said, they met in '94, and, they became no longer on speaking terms in, 2024. So, that's, 30 years of friendship. So, obviously, they were very good friends, especially working in music together. So, it seems as if Chad trusted Pharrell with a lot of the behind-the-scenes money things, probably because Pharrell was the bigger face and Pharrell was getting more opportunities, even though Chad was working on the music as well. But obviously, we know Pharrell, and we don't really know Chad. No disrespect. We know the Neptunes, but we don't know a lot about Chad. So that's probably one of the reasons he was allowing Pharrell to handle all these things. And it just sounds like he had too much trust in Pharrell, and years later, he started thinking about it, and he got screwed. He felt like he got screwed over, so he wanted to see the records to confirm that he got screwed over. And Pharrell wasn't handing him over, which is very fishy, in that it may seem like that he may have got screwed, because if you didn't screw somebody over, it wouldn't be, really a hassle to hand over the records. But if you did, it looks bad. Getting to the paperwork, it says the plaintiff, Chad, brings the action for a breach of fiduciary duty, accounting, and declaratory relief arising from defendant Williams' systematic denial of plaintiff's contractual and ownership rights in the company and the Neptune entities. Over an extended period, defendant Williams has failed to provide plaintiff with access to essential financial records, has withheld distributions and profits to which plaintiff is entitled under the company's limited liability operating agreement, and has exercised control over the company and the Neptune's entity revenues in a manner inconsistent with his fiduciary obligations to the plaintiff. Through this action, plaintiff seeks a judiciary declaration of his rights and defendant Williams' obligations under the operating agreement. The Neptune's entity operating agreement and the defendant's entity operating agreements a full and transparent account of all revenues generated through the Neptune's entities and a transparent account of all revenues generated through the Neptune's entities and the company in connection with the production duo, the Neptunes, and the musical group N.E.R.D, and the recovery of profits and the distribution wrongfully withheld from the defendants, the company, and the Neptune's entity. So that was just really a more descriptive of what they're exactly accusing Pharrell of, or Chad is accusing Pharrell of. So getting into factual allegations, I'm just reading the ones important, because some of these is just basically laying out basic details about how they met, that they worked on music together, things of that sort. Things that's not really important. It's important to the case, obviously, because that's how we got here, but not important for the bad part of it. It seems to be that the music he is specifically talking about is from that N.E.R.D debut album, In Search Of, and then the recordings that included Fly or Unalive and other projects. because that's what's named here. And then the next paragraph, you'll see these recordings related activities generated revenues by released albums and music, publishing, touring, merchandise, synchronization, and brand collaborations, all of which were enabled in substantial part by plaintiff's contributions as a writer, producer, arranger, and performer. Although defender Williams often received greater public visibility, like I said earlier, that might be one of the reasons why Chad was okay with him handling everything business-wise. Plaintiff's contributions as a founding creative partner, co-writer, producer, and co-founder of both the Neptunes and N.E.R.D were indispensable to the commercial value, goodwill, and brand recognition associated with these ventures. Alright, getting into one parts of the operating agreement. So the operating agreement at section 6.1d provides that all members shall be given on a monthly basis a statement indicating the income and the expenses of the company for the preceding month. The manager and the members shall be provided with copies of or access to all books and records of the company on an ongoing basis, and shall be provided with copies of the underlying royalty statements from all third parties promptly after receipt by the company. So that's bad for real, because that clearly states that they signed some type of agreement that said they all should have some type of monthly copy of the royalties and statements and things of that sort. And Chad is up here saying he's never received anything like that. So if you got that in a contractual thing, I think that's a great way for your case. So it didn't say the operating agreement at section 10.3 provides that within 120 after the end of each fiscal year, the company shall cause to be delivered to each member a financial statement of the company for the prior fiscal year, prepared at the expense of the company, which financial statement shall set forth as for the end of and for such fiscal year. The following: a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet of the company, the balance on each member capital account, and such information as reasonably shall be necessary for the Class A and Class B members to be advised of the financial status and results of operations of the company. So that's basically saying the same thing as the last one. Obviously, it's just a little bit of a different paperwork because it says the yearly fiscal compared to a monthly report. But that's basically saying the same thing, that they were owed a yearly report that, again, Chad is saying he never received. So the operating agreement at section 10.4 provides that upon a unanimous determination by the managers, the company may provide the members quarterly operating statements and reports of the financial condition of the company in such form as reasonably and unanimously determined by the managers of each quarter, that shall be submitted to the members within 60 days after end of each quarter. That's again basically saying the same thing as previous two, just a different time statement on it with the quarters, which is what, fourth of a year, so every 3 months. So it says the operating agreement at Schedule A provides the percentage interest and category splits are as follows. Defendant Williams holds 50% of the units and is entitled to 50% of torn and other income and 33% of merchandise and trademark income. Plaintiff and Mr. Haley each hold 25% of the units and are each entitled to 25% of torn and other income and 33% of merchandise and trade income. So, earlier they had spoke about the merchandise and trade, how they, he withheld that. So, again, another thing that says a clear day in the contract that they're owed this, and it seems that they have not gotten that, especially when that part was split evenly. It was split evenly between the three. Obviously, like I already read, that Pharrell, when it came to the touring and the units sold and things of that sort, he owned 50% while the other two owned 25%. Which, like I said, that's probably due to the fame and virality. But that also could be due to how much music, how much they think they're incorporated with the music. But it's probably, more of the former than the latter. It says by virtue of section 6.1a through D and 10.3 and the tax matters member provision, Defender Williams, as the manager whose consent is required for the manager action, the sole authorized signatory with authority to bind the company and a designated tax members and member, is responsible for causing the company to A, provide monthly statements of income and expenses, furnish prompt copies of third-party royalty statements upon receipt, provide ongoing access to all books and records, D, deliver annual financial statements, including profit loss balance sheet and each member's capital account balance within 120 days after each fiscal year. So that statement right there is saying, basically, round up with everything else, saying that Pharrell was the manager that was put in charge of this. So Pharrell had the duty of providing them with the monthly report, the one after every fiscal year, and the quarterly report. And like I've repeated multiple times, clearly, Chad is saying he never received anything, so Pharrell's not doing what he was contractually obligated to do. So then it says, further, plaintiff holds a 50% ownership interest in the Neptunes entities and therefore entitled to receive revenues and corresponding to that ownership share. That's basically, plain as day that they saying he owns 50% and that, he's getting, obviously Pharrell must be keeping the revenue somehow, some way. So that's why we're here. So it says, upon review of the incomplete financial stat of records produced by the defendant Williams, incomplete is not a good look already when you're getting sued. It appears that little revenue has been allocated to the plaintiff from the Neptunes entity's profits, which is inconsistent with the Neptunes' evident commercial success. Clear as day. That one's clear as day. So this ain't the first time they start beefing, according to this part. It says, notably in or around February 2019, after a brief hiatus in their collaboration as the Neptune, defendant expressly stated to the plaintiff that he never wanted to work without plaintiff again and requested that the plaintiff travel to Miami, Florida to work on various songs under the Neptunes. As part of this renewed agreement, the parties agreed to a 50-50 production split. What the fuck did I just say? Oh, prediction. And 50-50 of the publishing split for each composition. These are the same splits which were in effect throughout the entire decade-long working relationship between the plaintiff and defendant Williams as the Neptunes. Between 2019 and 2021, the plaintiff fully performed on the arrangement by providing all production services requested and contributing to nearly 50, studio sessions conducted by the Neptunes. So, just to pause right there, that just makes me wonder what, it says between 2019 and 2021, what exactly, what works are they talking about? Okay, so it seemed to me that some of the stuff they could be talking about is you have Trenches, which was a Monica song with Lil Baby. I thought it was a pretty decent song. You have That Right There, which is a Summer Walker song on Still Over It. You have a Pop Smoke song, which I think is from his post Humming album. Pomegranate, I think that's their song. You got Wasting Time, which was that Drake Brent Faiyaz song, which was pretty decent. So, a lot of successful works, even in that little time period, that they should have earned at least decent money off of. So they said defendant Williams failed to honor plaintiff's entitlement under the arrangement, denied plaintiff his rightful publishing share and share of record royalties, and wrongfully took full credit for plaintiff's contributions without proper attribution or compensation. Compensation. This one says the breach of the operating agreement. I feel like those other things already kind of told you how he breached this one, but this one is giving dates closer, so I'll read the bottom part of this section. It says, since 2021, the plaintiff has been in the process of trying to obtain the monthly statements, books, and records, and royalty statements to which he is contractually entitled. Defendant Williams has failed to produce such documents despite repeated demands. On or about August 18, 2021, plaintiff then counsel sent defendant Williams counsel a demand letter for the production of certain financial documents, and no documents were produced. Said March 18, 2022, plaintiff then counsel, sent a letter to defendant Williams counsel, identifying defendant Williams' failure to account for both the company and the Neptune's entities' financial records, placing defendant Williams on a notice of plaintiff claims and need for transparency and compensation. Defendant Williams failed to resolve these issues. Then they talking about another time they demanded it, and they hadn't got it. So these ones are they're getting a little repetitive, so that's why I'm not trying to read this part of it. But basically it's just saying that Chad Hugo, and I'll leave the link in here if y'all want to read it yourself, but basically the ending statements are like saying that Chad Hugo has over numerous times tried to get access to these records. Pharrell has said he was going to get him these records. He never did, and some of them were incomplete, the ones that he did produce, which I said earlier. So crazy. Okay, so this one's just talk about the merchandise sales. It just talk about how they enter a deal with a company, Corner Merchandising, to which the plaintiff was entitled 33% of all profits. Plaintiff received approximately $136,000 between August 22 and September 23. Though through merchandise sales continued past that date, plaintiff has not received any corresponding distributions past September 23. Whew, that's crazy for real. Further example, plaintiff is owed at least $325,000 to $575,000 with potential damages exceeding $750K to $1 million for the No One Ever Really album alone, which debuted at number 10 on Billboard and it has millions of streams. It's saying all the counts. So the counts ones, like I said, breach of fiduciary duty. Like I said, was basically, he was obligated to, be in the best interest of the whole group. Was not doing that. The accountants on multiple counts, which is obviously him failing to produce the paperwork, and now a request for relief, and then a demand for a jury trial. So you do also have the exhibit. The exhibit's not really providing a lot of information. Is kind of defining a lot of terms we're using, but this is the one that at the bottom was the one with the signature with Pharrell Chad, and not the signature from Shay Haley. So this is why I say I don't know if he's getting in on this. I don't know if he's like, this is more of a personal thing, I want to get out of this. But I feel like if Chad got hold, you probably got hold too. So basically, I say all this to say, clearly, you cannot put trust. You cannot, even if close friends you met years ago, way before you got successful, you cannot just put trust in them when it comes to money and business. Money is probably the thing that people turn on you the most for. So I would say, even if no matter how close the relationship is, how much you trust them, you probably should, try to get a hold of financial records and things of that sort, which is very, very important. But you just can't trust these niggas. But in my personal opinion, from what I read, it sounds like there was a lot of contracts signed with, Pharrell having to do these things. Now, it wasn't like, nigga, they just agreed on these word of mouth. It sounded like these is actual, contractual things. So if you signed a contract and you violate it, I don't think he has a great case. I will also say, I do think Chad probably has a great case for this. If them contracts is like Chad and his lawyer are, putting together in a federal lawsuit, I think he has a great case, because violating contracts is crazy. But I will also say, I think he can get a little bit more money, honestly, than that million, I guess. Or if he's trying to get to 1.5 because it's 5 and then a mil, I think he might be able to get a little more money. But that's really all I gotta say though. Like, share, subscribe, comment. I do check out my video, and we out.